All right, welcome. The little flashing icon in the corner, I believe, with this new software means that we are now live and getting this Fire Engineering Humpday Hangout going for the day. Thank you very much to those that are tuning in to our first Wednesday of the month, the Focus on Training Fire Engineering Humpday Hangout. As always, we've got a great panel of co-hosts and guests here to talk about today's topic, which is going to be effective company level drills. ISFSI is always proud to partner with the folks at Fire Engineering Clarion Events Group for the first Wednesday of each month. Our focus on training. We're happy to be back again. My name is Brad French. I'm a captain with the Dayton Fire Department in Dayton, Ohio, assigned to Ladder 11 downtown. I also have the great privilege of bringing on with me today one of my mentors as a company officer, the gentleman that had the assignment that I now have for a long period of time before that, Captain Larry Abels, now retired and works here at Sinclair Community College, where we have this office space that I typically tune into these Humpday Hangouts to do. So going to have a lot of great stuff from Captain Abels as well. A couple of things as we move forward over the next hour to keep in mind, some housekeeping functions. Number one, the hashtag FE Talk. Oftentimes on social media, on Facebook and Twitter, if people have comments or questions that they'd like for us to address as a panel, just ask it and use that hashtag FE Talk. I'll try to keep an eye on that in the background, and the fire engineering staff tries to keep an eye on that in the background as well. Chief Halton may join us. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. He may jump on at some point, and if so, we'll give him the floor for a little while. But Chief Bobby Halton, the editor-in-chief of Fire Engineering Magazine and conference director for FDIC International. For those of you that are doing your planning and budgeting and all that kind of stuff, obviously we're getting kind of late in the year here, but as you look forward to next year, make sure you get FDIC International 2020 on that calendar in Indianapolis. I usually bring up the website so I can quickly recite the date, but I didn't. I want to say it's April 8th through the 12th. Maybe one of the other guys can look that up for me real quick in case I said that date wrong. But hopefully they're feverishly looking. Anyway, FDIC.com. FDIC.com is the website for FDIC International 2020. Anybody pick up that date so I didn't get it wrong? All right, we'll come back to that. I was remiss to not have that up, so I had the date correct. But anyway, make sure you check out FDIC.com. There's all kinds of articles on there every year. The classes have now been released, or the instructors informed, I should say, and they're building all that content on the website as far as instructor articles and class descriptions and all that kind of stuff. So make sure you check that out. So we'll go ahead and move forward to some panel introductions. So Aaron Heller, let's start with you, brother. I think you're on duty today, so if it all falls apart, you might have to leave us, which is certainly understandable. But I'll kick it up to you.
Yeah, I just missed an alarm. Luckily, it hit the other side of town just a minute ago, so I'm okay for now. My name's Aaron Heller. I'm a captain in Hamilton, New Jersey. I own On-Scene Training Associates, and been an instructor at FDIC for many, many years, and luckily coming back again April 19th through the 25th, as you were requesting, Brad. Falling later in the month.
I think it was early month this year.
Yeah. Usually I'm missing my son's birthday because he's April 12th, so I've missed more birthdays in his 20 years of me going. But I'm looking forward to this. This is an important conversation. Literally just having this conversation with our training officer here at work over lunch an hour ago. So good stuff.
All right, excellent. We're looking forward to hearing, as a longtime company officer, I'm sure you've got a lot of things that have worked for you and not worked for you very well over the years. So looking forward to getting back around and getting into some content here. Chief Tony Carroll.
Hi, guys. Yes, I want to show that I'm wearing my Washington Nationals hat after a big win last night. We're going to LA for the divisional playoffs. Hopefully you guys will root for the Nationals. It was a tough win, but they pulled it out. I'm going to go to FDIC also. I'm going to do a Mayday Monday, which I kind of ties into the company level training that I would like to talk about. I guess we'll get around to that in a minute. But yeah, FDIC, usually it's my birthday that I'm celebrating out there because my birthday is April 27th. Fortunately, they moved it up a little bit sooner so I can come home and celebrate my birthday here.
All right, excellent. And for those that are tuning in that maybe don't tune in on a regular basis, Chief Carroll's quite humble and didn't mention it, but he's a battalion chief for Washington, D.C., and currently assigned to the training division. So has a lot of experience as a company officer, and has been getting a lot of great perspective in the training bureau there for the past year. So we look forward to hearing that. All right, Chief Steve Shaw, let's kick it down south to Florida, where I always seem to want to be, but never am.
It's beautiful over here in Florida. Yeah, I'm Steve Shaw, Fort Lauderdale Fire Rescue, Battalion Chief of Training and Special Operations. I'm also the chair of the Training and Education Subcommittee for Broward County. And I'm excited to be talking about this topic today. As the training chief for an organization, the company level training that happens, I don't like to micromanage. I like to support and encourage and maybe perhaps give ideas, provide them the tools in which to do their job, acquired structures, and so on and so forth. But that company level training is critical to the organization. As much as I'll set down a training schedule, I rely on those. I need those company officers to be absolutely A game ready all the time, deliver constant great training, enough to where they're doing what they want to do, to where they're putting their personal spin on it, but also representing the organization and making sure the ultimate goals for training are accomplished at the same time. So it's a big subject we're talking about today. I'm excited to talk about it.
Absolutely. And in fairness, for any regular watchers of this Humpday Hangout on either the first Wednesday or any others, this is a frequently talked about discussion piece here. And the reason that a lot of folks end up going back to this and highlighting this concept of company level training on a very regular basis on these training hangouts is because it is just that important. Very, very critical that training be occurring at the company level. So I want to kick it over to the gentleman that I mentioned earlier to let Captain Abels tell you a little bit about himself and his background.
Oh, well, thank you. Again, my name is Larry Abels, Captain. Recently retired from the Dayton Fire Department after almost 33 years, and then had 10 years prior to that as a volunteer. So I've been in the fire service quite some time. Served as a company officer at a couple different fire stations, and Company 11 was the last where we did. Also did the Dayton Regional Hazardous Materials Response Team. So got a pretty wide background. Fortunately, right after retired, I took this position as the program director here at Sinclair College for the Fire Science and Technology program. So, and I've been teaching recruits for a number of years. I taught 4 recruit classes for the city of Dayton and been teaching a number of Fire 1, Fire 2 recruits for quite a few years. This is one of those that got by, and but proud of him. He's done a great job.
All right, well, fantastic. Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, Captain Abels has been a fantastic mentor to me throughout my career as a firefighter and a company officer. So I thought it'd be great to have him on today to talk about this issue. So I think, yeah, go ahead, Chief.
Captain, I have one question. When I met Brad, he was yelling at us. He definitely has an instructor voice. Did he get that from you?
Well, that's
he's been known to yell a few times.
Yeah, a Dayton recruit school is like Paris Island. If you, it's a little different than a college class.
You got to grab control and maintain that control, and Brad does that.
Well, thanks, Chief. I appreciate that. And so let's move forward with what we're going to talk about today. One of the first things that I kind of wanted to get into, and Chief Shaw already alluded to this a little bit, is training at the company level in the fire service is so important. But the question that I want to pose to the panel is, where should it come from? Should that come from the chief of the department that says, I want the company's training on this today? Should that come from further down in a mid-management type of situation in the organization, where you have a training bureau, training chief, training captain, something like that, saying, hey, this is what we should be training on, and at least coming from one voice, so there's that uniformity throughout? Or should that be coming from the company officer level? Should that company officer just be saying, hey, it's Wednesday, today I want to do ground ladders? Or should it be some combination of both, which I would tend to, on a personal level, probably think that it should be some combination of both. And so, Chief Shaw, we'll kick it to you first. Where do you like to see the impetus for company training coming from?
Wow, what a tremendously loaded question to start off with. Okay. So I think we should start off by giving this in perspective. My perspective is obviously different than the fire chief's down to the rank firefighter. And my perspective is, when we develop whatever schedule we do for training, we put it out there, we rely on the company officers to make sure at the station level that takes place. So first things I will say is I rely so heavily and trust and empower those company officers as best I can, because those are our link to the rest of the department. And I make sure that they understand that they have this amazing platform. Training shouldn't be a hassle like, oh, we got to train. No, it is an amazing platform from which to stand to pass on influence, to lead, to make sure that everybody understands exactly what they're doing to perform an A-level game all the time. But in regards to the content, I love it when a fire chief says to me, Steve, train on this. I want it trained on now. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Whatever. And it gives me a little bit of extra momentum to get going. So I like it when it comes from on top. That being said, uh, in the area where there's a vacuum, I'm going to create content. You don't need to tell me. I'm a self starter. I'm the battalion chief for a large organization. Oh, we're going to train. Whether you tell me or not, we're going to train. And we have a pretty detailed idea of what we're going to do based on things like ISO standards, NFPA consensus standards, best practices, and whatnot. And we have a general annual training calendar that we follow. Now, on the baseline, as long as they're getting the basics done from the ISO calendar, from the calendar we create, I'm happy. But for example, in our department, everybody's required to train an hour and a half per shift. Now, I don't care what they train on, as long as it's something in regards of the firefighting activities, whether they're talking about building construction, laying a line, ropes and knots, whatever. That's on them. If they need support, if they need help with the content, ideas, and so on and so forth, acquire structures that we have them, absolutely, I'll help out. But I'm not going to micromanage anybody. Our goal is to empower the company officers and give them the tools they need to perform at the best they can at the station level. And also going down the line, I love it when other agencies within our organization, other divisions or firefighters, whoever, call us and say, hey, I thought about this, or prevention calls. Hey, listen, what are you guys doing for elevator operations? Because it seems like the crews have a lot of questions. They're providing us with the impetus to have further create our content or maybe contour what we're currently doing. So it comes from all angles. And I think that's kind of the point. It does come from all angles. It should come from a little bit on top. I'm going to do what I need to do to make the organization run, plus try to add in as much extra content as I can. But I like to take advantage of the subject matter experts and expertise we have in the field as well.
So, Chief, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question on that. Do you have in Fort Lauderdale? Do you have any kind of formal mechanism in place to try to gather that stuff from the company officers that they may need when you're developing your training calendar at the beginning of the year, or is that more just kind of a word of mouth thing?
No, 100%. We have a formalized suggestion program that is an actual SOP. That if someone in the field has something they think that should be taking place, whether it's an idea for training or something even broader scope, it goes through this formalized suggestion program format, goes through channels, and from there it branches off into areas like, well, it's good enough to go to R&D, and we'll go through it that way, or it goes to another route where it goes through different people in the fire and prevention, or in our logistics area, or wherever else, to seek follow-up. So we do have a pretty formalized plan, but being in training, I get to be part of health and safety and the R&D committees and the CQI committees. So being there is an integral part of that. As things are talked about, as meetings take place, you're always thinking about, well, how do I incorporate that into the training program? So because we have so many, I guess we reach out to so many different parts of our organization, we bring that back because we're right there and hear it and try to incorporate it as best we can.
I like that, and I asked that kind of as a personal question about that mechanism being in place, because we don't in Dayton Fire, we do not have something. There's a lot of word of mouth. When I was at the training division, I would get random phone calls and said, hey, what is this? Can we train on this? Maybe some new thing that they noticed in their district or something like that. But there's not a formal mechanism in place, and I kind of like that idea. Of having something, even a policy in place for suggesting training from that bottom up, as the old saying goes, water boils from the bottom up, right? And oftentimes some of the best ideas may come from the street level of the organization, and the training division needs to be aware of that. So that's great stuff. Chief Carroll, I'll kick it over to you in DC. How much is being driven out of your offices there at the training academy, and how much is just self-motivated at the company level?
I think that it needs to be the best training we have is the company level training. Our training academy is, I would say, 9 months or 8 months out of the year is EMS is coming out of that on a day-to-day basis. So every company comes down, right, for 4 hours a quarter to get their EMS training for a total of 12 hours a year. From January to the end of March, it's all makeups from the previous year. So companies are trying to get down there to get their 12 hours of EMS training. From April 1st till maybe May, we had a break. This last year we had a break. We used it to talk about a hot topic, which was rooftop deck fires. We're getting a lot of rooftop deck fires, so we were able to bring companies down. Unfortunately, it didn't run long enough to get every company down. Then we went back to EMS mods. We had EMS mods from that would be May till the first part of September. In September, we were supposed to start high-rise training. Unfortunately, we have a tough time finding a high-rise building where we can do a standpipe. So we did find a vacant building, but it is we are doing some like survival stuff, right? The survival stuff that we need. So otherwise, everything else is kind of driven by the company officer. It's up to the company officer then to get this stuff in. And I go back to when I was a company officer, I really didn't, right? And I took ownership of my company, and I didn't think I needed the academy or needed the chiefs to tell me what to drill on. I kind of knew, right? I could read the pulse of my company and identify what our needs were. Now, I did a lot of time on a truck, did a lot of time on a rescue company, not so much on an engine, but I knew, right? There's a lot of stuff with the rescue company, a lot. There's a lot with the truck company. So with all that kind of stuff in mind, Monday we work 24 on, 72 off. So I only work one day a month, right? I work one Monday a month, one Tuesday, one Wednesday, 7 days a month, 8 days a month I work. So what I did every Monday, we would drill on a Mayday idea, firefighter survival, firefighter rescue, whatever, every Monday. And it was pretty much a practical drill. Tuesdays, we tried something else. Eventually, the fire department was doing at that time, really years ago, they were doing flashover Fridays. So they would run flashover drills, bring companies down. That's kind of where this was born, right? So hopefully, and I was talking to a company officer earlier today. We were doing some training at the academy, and I'm like, when do you make sure your firefighters get training on Mayday stuff? Well, Chief, I don't know. How about you do it every Monday? Every Monday you work, you do something Mayday. So that's kind of where that stuff was born, right? That's where that Mayday Monday came from. Again, if you had something else pop up that day, that's fine. Just get some kind of drill in. But if you're thinking about what to drill, maybe Mondays will be Mayday. Wednesdays could be Water Wednesday. You do something engine company based. Maybe Tuesdays was Truck Tuesday, right? You do something, you do ladders, you put ladders up, but something like that. Because again, there's a lot of stuff we have to drill on. The company in my fire department, it's really up to them to find time. They go on a medical local, they take time, maybe extra time to run a line, right? A lot of them are taking, you've seen the jugs of twine, jugs of rope, where instead of stretching a rope, they might stretch a rope to see how far a line stretch might be. So they get an idea, right? They can test, okay, we know we're going to need a 200-foot line in this building. So they take advantage of those runs. Again, company familiarization, maybe they'll get out, look at their district. But it's really, our training is really driven by the company. We just started doing weekend drills. The battalions kind of handle coming down to the academy on weekends. They get 2 hours on Saturday. Then we have 6 battalions with the 7th as special ops. So they'll run 2 hours on a Saturday, 2 hours on a Sunday for a total of 6 hours. But it's really driven. You got to get it in on the company, because the academy's trying to keep their head above water just doing the EMS stuff. It's a shame. It's a real shame. But that's kind of where we are.
And so, Chief, I'll ask you a follow-up question as well, which is, what is the accountability for that? Are they documenting that in some type of a target solutions or a learning management system of some kind? Are they sending you an email? How is that all being tracked?
Again, that's kind of started, right? We're starting to get off the ground with that. It's a slow start, but yes, we have the ability to go into target solutions and log that, because there also has recently been a push to kind of get in line with NFPA 1500, which really talks about refresher training on those basic skills. So in order to do that, right, in order to satisfy 1500, they want to document that. So yes, we have the ability now for a company officer to kind of document 2 hours here on stretching lines, 2 hours on ladders. But that's new. That's new, and it's going to take a little bit of time to get everybody kind of up to that.
All right, that's interesting stuff, and that also sparked another question in my head. And if any of you have any thoughts on this, you're welcome to chime in on it when it gets back around to you. But does the company officer need to have some type of an instructor credential? Does the company officer need to have NFPA instructor 1 or something like that? If you look at NFPA 1021, which is the fire officer standard, it talks about instructor 1 being a prerequisite for officer 1, right? And so the NFPA kind of says that they should, but how closely we stick to that, I don't know. It would be interesting to know from all of your different perspectives if that's required in your state, or if it's not required at all, or maybe your organization requires that instructor training for the company officer at the first line supervisor level or not. But we can get back around to that. Aaron, I want to kick it over to you, brother. Where is the training oftentimes driven within your organization, and if you had a magic wand, how would that all work?
Well, with us, it's interesting. We have a training captain, and that's his responsibility. And is that call for me? Okay. Sorry about this. Okay. Yep. I got to jump off. Let me tell you real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Our drills are driven by our training officer in-house. He puts out our annuals calendar. It's what I did for many years until recently when he got that position and I gave it up. So he gives out an annual, and then every month at the beginning of the month we get what the monthly drills are going to be, a little bit more in depth with each lesson plan. That being said, our captains, who are our company officers, when I got promoted years ago, 20 years ago, we were required to have instructor level 2 through New Jersey. So that was the big thing, because the captains were going to have to present and prepare. Now they've patched that back a little bit to instructor level 1, but most of the guys get their level 2 anyway. So, but with us, it's driven from the company officer level. Although the chief will absolutely give input on that training schedule. Obviously, we have the mandatories. The other big thing that we've been very fortunate is the guys can really push things up. The tail can wag the dog. So if a guy goes out and sees, hey, I really like this idea of this new thing with a rip pack, can we train on it? It definitely gets interest, and we're small enough that we get it into the schedule. And but I believe it should be driven at the company level. Even if the training captain puts out an extensive schedule, there's still other things that I should be doing that I see with my guys or that they see. So we just augment it. And as Tony said, documentation is key. We have Firehouse software. So every drill that we ever do, any driver training, it goes into the Firehouse software so we can document all that. But I got to jump off and take this call. It sounds like
thanks for being here, Aaron. Always great to get your perspective, brother. Go do your thing.
All right, guys. Sorry.
All right, so Cap, I'm going to turn this over to you. What are your thoughts on within the department, either the way it was on the job, or the way that you think it should be for where a lot of that company level training should be coming from, or should it be coming from different places?
Well, I think it can come from both. With us, we have our own training facility, and I think they send out, or they did, training ideas or training that was required. But I think the bulk of the training is at the company officer level. I don't necessarily think they need to be instructors. I think if you are a company officer in charge of whether it's an engine or a truck, you ought to know what that apparatus, what the job responsibilities are of that apparatus, and be able to understand that and get that across to your crew. And the tactics that are used by your department as it regards your apparatus, you should be able to teach that without being an instructor. So I think the most important training is going to come from that company officer. And quite honestly, and listening to the discussion, I think there's been, at least for us, what I've noticed, I've been, it's been over 30 years for me. We had a lot of older officers when I came on. They weren't too interested in the training. Okay. It was the culture of the department. And the new guy coming out that was gung ho kind of got beat down pretty quick. Fortunately, when we did, when your class and a lot of the other classes since yours came out, the department has noticed a change. We've shifted and we've become much younger. And I think at the training center, at the recruit level, is where if you have good instructors, they will instill that desire in you to train, to want to train. And I think that is carried on as your class. Many of them are officers today. And now I see a much younger department and a department who has company officers that want to train and crews that want to train. So I think it's a culture thing.
Yeah. Well, and something Cap brought up made something pop up into my head as well, which is the importance. I've always really been passionate about the importance of empowering all of your members in the company, right? Just as Cap said, does the company officer have to be an instructor? Well, no, not necessarily. And I would also take that a step further, is to say the instructor for that company level training might not be that company officer. You might very well have a good senior member that is an outstanding apparatus operator, or knows a lot about a certain specialty topic, or maybe does, building construction, maybe works for a contractor as a day off job. And so they have an extensive knowledge in building construction or something like that. And so sometimes that company level training doesn't even have to be driven by the company officer. It can be driven by a member that company officer is wise enough to empower to give that opportunity to. Because I think sometimes in any organization, just as you mentioned earlier, the young enthusiastic ones can have a tendency to get beat down a little bit, and that's not what we want. That's not good. There's not a lot of good organizational health there if there's a whole lot of beating down of enthusiasm and passion, especially in our younger members. We need to try to recognize that as company officers, see that potential and harness that potential, give them an opportunity. Say, hey, look, you're gonna next day you're going to present on this topic or that topic. Hey, next day you're doing SCBA emergency procedures or something, and then let them go to it. Let them. They'll as soon as you tell them that, they're going to go research every piece of literature and information on that. They're going to practice. They're going to get themselves ready, which there's an obvious tangible benefit to that. But then as soon as you give them that opportunity, that next shift day, to kind of show their stuff to everybody else in the company, they're going to do a great job, and then that's also going to build that buy-in in the company. It's going to make them feel more like a part of the team.
Yeah, my first experience of that was as a lieutenant at a station that hadn't done much training, and I gave them assignments. Here it is. Here's what you're going to have, and they kind of had a little bit of pushback, but give me 15 minutes. And okay, and I wondered that first day that it was due whether I'd get anything. He went an hour and a half. Goes back to what you say. Once he got into it, we were an hour and a half talking about something very basic. So it worked out very well.
Yeah, and then of course starting the drill then takes you into all the other different places to where it turns out to, like you said, an hour and a half, 2 hours later, you're sitting there talking shop, and man, everybody has gained so much from it. So it's interesting to start with a company drill and then sometimes watch what that blossoms into in terms of discussion and things like that. And just real quick, while I still happen to have the floor here, and I'll kick it back around to everybody else, one other thing that I would be remiss to mention, because it's something that I'm so passionate about, is that a lot of company drills should also try to involve a human factor, right? Should involve a case study, should involve a firefighter incident where someone had died or something like that. Whether that be from your area or somewhere else. I know Chief Carroll with the Mayday Mondays that he submits to fire engineering and get pushed out on a regular basis, and the oftentimes subject of one of his FDIC classes for Mayday Monday. A lot of times those reference real world line of duty death incidents, and I think that is critical. If you as a company officer can research that stuff, maybe just present a drill with an NIOSH report, and then sit there and talk shop and talk tactics for the next hour over a cup of coffee based upon what was in that firefighter fatality report. Or maybe take it a step further and do some down firefighter movements, or a Nance drill up through a floor out at the training academy or something like that. But utilizing those, talking in instructor speak, right? Trying to capture that affective domain, right? The cognitive and the psychomotor domains are a little bit easier to reach, but that affective domain, that making them care about what you're teaching them is sometimes a little harder to get to. And I think the way to do that oftentimes is through some real world case studies and examples and stuff. So let's keep the conversation moving forward here. What about some ownership? How do we try to get our company officers to be more self motivated? We talked about giving them the tools and the importance of the chief or the training academy or whatever, giving them the tools. But how do you make pride, or is that even a thing? How do you try to inspire those company officers and those companies in general to try to want to be better and to try to want to train more? One of the examples that I always use is that if you are a company officer and you've got a big fire, something major going on, big crash, something like that, and the chief looks down the street. The chief looks down the street and he sees a company walking to him. One of two things is going to pop into that chief's head based upon their knowledge of the capabilities, the training level of that company. They're either going to be, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do with this goof crew here, right? Or they're going to be like, hey, you, come here, hurry up, let's go. Here's what I need you to do. I need you to get a third line up to the half story. We got fire extension into the knee walls. Report back to me. Something like that, right? You want to be that company that the chief looks down the street and is excited to see. So that's one of the things that I always kind of use as a little bit of motivation when I'm talking to either company officers or line firefighters about trying to be the best. So what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on that, Chief Shaw? How do you try to get them to be a little bit more self-motivated?
So, to what you were just talking about, I guess I have some good experience with that. Before I came to training, me and two other officers on the same on different shifts at the same station at our station 46, which was known as the Sister Trunk Express. We were all there for 3 years straight, and we were one of the busier companies in the city, but yet we trained more than anybody. And we were very proud of it. We took a lot of pride. You didn't need to tell us to train. We were always out there doing something, and everybody was. We had an engine and two medical rescues, and those medical rescues, the rescues, were training with us all the time. It wasn't an option. Oh, I'm running a call. I'm too busy. No, we are a team. We are a crew. We will train together. We took a lot of pride in that. We took a lot of pride back in the day. And I remember upgrading a lot as battalion chief before I became promoted and thinking the same thing, looking at the lineup for the day, staring at the lineup and going, okay, if I got a TRT call, yeah, I'm good. These guys are squared away. If I got a hazmat call, I'm solid. Oh crap, if I get something up here, oh boy. But then I thought about that. I'm like, wait a minute. Just thinking it like that, like, wait a minute, hold on. That's not enough. Just if I'm thinking that, like, oh, there's a problem, well, now it's on me. I have to take care of that problem or try to do something about that. It goes back to what I wanted to start with, and that's just first of all is clear communication. I mean, it goes. We always talk about this. It's kind of like we're beating the drum again and again, but clear communication, explaining to those under either at your station or in my case, the battalion chief, talking to the captain and company officers, make sure they adamantly know I need your help. I need your expertise. I need your enthusiasm. I need your motivation. I need your positivity. You are the link to pass on that knowledge to those crews. I need you. Make sure they understand the weight of what they have to do, the platform they have to stand upon to disseminate that information. So first things first is just communicate, explain to them, remind them, even if you think they know it. It's like my wife. My wife always, when we first started dating, and she's like, "You never say I love you." I'm like, "Well, you know I love you." She goes, "Yeah, but I like to hear it." I'm like, "Oh, same thing here." The company officers, you can't just assume they know how to teach or that they're supposed to be drilling every day, or maybe even why, or maybe they get into a slump or whatever. Constantly remind them. Constant gentle pressure, just like our recently our old medical director used to say, constant gentle pressure. Constantly reminding them, "Thank you for drilling. Good job. I need you to do this," but just constantly reinforcing the importance of them at that critical level. I would love to go out and teach 400 people. It'd be awesome. There's no way logistically it's possible that's going to happen. So it needs to be made very clear how important their role is. And if they need help or guidance or anything, we'll supply that. We'll support that. But I think the first part is just making sure they understand that role.
Yeah, it's great stuff, and I just don't want to go on record as saying I love you, Steve. I just want that to be clear. Um, anyway, Chief Carroll, how do you increase ownership of efficiency and effectiveness at the company level? If you've got a problem company officer or something like that that's disgruntled that doesn't like to do anything, how do you try to right that ship?
I guess old school, you could maybe shame him, but that's not, we don't want to go there, right? But I think one of the things that we don't really have is a a standard across our fire department on what the expectation is for like stretching a line or putting a ladder up. So perhaps, having get that, start with a standard and then kind of test your crews against that. That may even build like, a competition. Each company wants to stretch their line faster than the last company. They want to be able to get it in service quicker than the last company. That would be a motivator. And I think that maybe then they would take ownership and try, because right, ultimately, yes, they're beating the other crew, but they're getting better for the citizens that ultimately are going to benefit from them being able to run that line faster. That's a good question, though. I don't know. Do you identify him as a problem, or just kind of keep throwing him? Maybe you keep throwing him softballs and hoping that one of them will stick, and you find maybe the right topic. Maybe that guy is a HVAC guy, or maybe he's an electrician, and you can use his expertise to train the rest of the battalion. Perhaps that would show we could show his value and use that to get him motivated about the next training. Maybe he'll say, "Hey, I also ran a line like this. Can I do that?" It's a good one. You're gonna have to massage them, say "I love you," I guess, more often. But that may be a motivator. But I think we got to start with a standard on what we can judge each company on, or what we can judge the companies, and what the expectations that you have or your fire department has for each company.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think at some point, like you said, jokingly, but maybe a little bit seriously, the concept of a little bit of shaming, a little bit of, hey, man, aren't you guys going to do anything today? But I think also, I think it's okay as leaders within our organizations to have a fairly hard stance about expectations for training. I used to, when I was a firefighter, I obviously loved to train, and I used to joke with other firefighters like, hey, I'm just telling you now. So when I get promoted to lieutenant, you don't say, man, how French has changed. No, I'm telling you now that we're going to do a lot of training when I get promoted to lieutenant. So there's no surprises, right? And I kind of say the same thing now about in our organization. A district chief would be the next opportunity that I would have to promote. And I tell people now, if I'm a district chief and I go around to the companies and there's and I have an assigned officer in a firehouse within my district, and I walk in and I say, hey, how we doing today, guys? What's going on? What are we doing today? What are we doing for training? If the answer is huh, what, absolutely nothing, then they're only going to get away with that about a time or two before it's time to start looking at a new body in that firehouse. Because I think that at least in our organization, and I'm sure a lot of others, having an assignment, having a permanent assignment is a privilege, and is something that you work towards only after having spent some time, kind of carrying your boots around, as they say. And so I do think that at some point, if you have a problem company officer that takes no ownership in their company, isn't really concerned about their skill level, doesn't really bother them that they're a low performing company, I think that it's okay at some point to play hardball on that a little bit. Say, hey, look, either ship up or step up or ship out. So what do you think, Kev?
I agree with you. I think it goes back to the culture. We had quite a few years ago where once you got a company, you were set. You got comfortable, and you just cruised. Easy street. And I had one officer. As a matter of fact, that's the house of my first house as a lieutenant. The original officer there wouldn't do anything with his crew. And the district chief at the time, well, I don't want to wreck his career. I don't want to move him. And so he just allowed him to sit. So you just really enable that as a district chief or as a chief officer when you know it, and let it go. And eventually, actually, he got injured when he was off on vacation, and he never made it back to that firehouse. He ended up back on relief.
And think of the trickle down effect. If that's the attitude of the officer towards training, what possibly could be
and it
better?
Was the same way with these guys. They wanted to do things, but he wouldn't do anything, and he didn't want to draw attention to the house either. So they were just kind of left hanging out there, and things really changed when he left. And you found out the problem wasn't the house; it was the officer. Mm-hmm. And once they had a change, they were great.
Well, I think all of those options should be on the table. Anything you need to do, and I mean, you hate to go that route. You hate to go the negative route. You know, we joke about shaming. We talk about transfers and things like that. I think the best way to try to get them there is through your own example. You know, be the one, be a leader. Whether you're a company officer in an assignment or maybe somebody that's on a training assignment or whatever, be engaged in training. Be passionate about training, and so hopefully that will have a trickle down effect that'll kind of rub off on your officers as a district chief, just as we just mentioned, whatever that looks like in your organization, battalion chief, district chief, whatever. If you're in the fire SUV, as they say, show up to those training events, throw your gear on, get engaged, be a part of it. And show those company officers and younger members that you're not above that, you're not too cool for that, you don't already know that stuff and don't need to train on it again. If you show through example and you show through action as a senior supervisor that stuff still matters, I think that will have a rubbing off effect on everybody else. So we'll go around the horn again. I'd like to ask you all, as very experienced company officers, you know, in Cap's case, retired. Some of you now are promoted to chief positions and things like that, and so maybe don't ride the front right seat as often anymore, or ever. But when you did, drawing from that perspective, what were the highlights? What were the things that you love to do? Some of your favorites for company level training over the years. I'll start with myself, which is just one of my biggest things is district familiarization. Chief Carroll mentioned district familiarization earlier. We talk about that on these hangouts all the time. That's kind of a big thing for me. I absolutely love just getting in the truck and going out and parking. We happen to, our first two district, Cap's old house and now my current house happens to be our downtown high-rise district. And so we have a lot of stuff to look at all the time. And we love just taking the rig and going out and parking it, get a cup of coffee from one of the downtown coffee shops and just start walking, looking for forcible entry challenges, looking for FDC locations, going into some of our target hazard buildings and just chatting up the maintenance guy for a while about what's going on with the building, right? So just getting out and training by walking around, as they say, to kind of borrow from that management concept that you read in some of the books of managing by walking around, training by walking around, just going and walking around your district and seeing what's going on. Even if you're in more of a bedroom community or a first two district that's heavy residential, just getting out and parking and walking some streets, looking at layouts. If we have a fire in here, let's see, I know that this window on the side is probably telling me that that's where the stairwell is. My guess is that it's got this many bedrooms. They're probably on the second floor. You know, this door probably goes there. And I've got this access challenge for the back. We would ground ladder here, here, and here if we were RIT. You can just take that 1,000 different ways. And so getting out in your district and just simply walking around and looking and talking, as simple as that sounds, has a huge benefit. And the knowledge level of your company builds up over time to where they can start rattling off FDC locations. They can start rattling off how many floors that building is and things along those lines. The general construction trends in the residential neighborhoods. So just getting out, as simple as that sounds, was always my favorite thing. Chief Shaw, what'd you like to do a lot riding in the front seat?
Well, before I go there, I just want to acknowledge some of the statements that were just made. And I think you just mentioned one a second ago where somebody knew that the company officer wasn't, let's say, up all the fire, and they knew it, they let it go. So they unofficially approved that. They sanctioned it by not acting. That goes back to what we were talking about communication. You know, that kind of very frustrating for me because, you know, anywhere you go, you're going to see that. And it's just this tremendous lack of opportunity. And I think about that now. For me, for example, there's this possibility that I may in the next year or so go back to operations. And I'm remembering when I first started at my own firehouse, when I had my own firehouse, I set the tone day one. I explained to everybody, just like you were talking about before, guys, we will train every shift. We will train every shift. Expect there to be some sort of training every shift. That's it. End of story. So they knew there wasn't a surprise. It wasn't oh my gosh, are we training today? No, you know, going in, we're doing something. And if for some reason we don't, have a nice day off. But every day they knew that they were training. And I think about that going into what potentially could be me going back to operations. And if I were visiting stations and that clear communication, I would do the same thing with the captains. Just making sure we're on the same page. I expect there to be training every day, just so we're on the same page. Clear? Cool? All right, let's move on. Just so there's no miscommunication, there's no gray area. It's not like, I wonder if he was serious. No. You knew. But as for drills, I like the basics. And what I mean by that is just almost like doing scenario type stuff at the station, but covering the basics, enhancing and trying maximizing the basics. So we were talking about uh, I love pulling hose lines. I love just stretching lines and different ways to maximize that. But as an example, I took a course several years ago where they were talking about blitz attacking a garage and doing different types of styles of attacks. So the drill was that day, okay, let's see how quickly we can get one section of 5-inch hose connected to our RAM monitor in service flowing water. And that was the drill. So we just took turns over and over again, just grabbing and hooking up, having the driver flow water, and boom, and just it became a drill. It became a harnessing and a finessing of a certain tactic for a certain given scenario, but it was almost a competition, like you were saying too. Like this guy did it in 50 seconds. Well, this person's doing it in 52. This person's doing 48. Now we're getting it on video. Now we're sharing it. Now we're competing. But it was just in a multitude of ways, it was a good thing. So I always just work like working on the basics, making sure. My station was in a very busy area, and we had a lot of bread and butter fires and a lot of single story, single family CBS construction type fires. And I wanted us to be good. And so we were always practicing the basics. I'm happy because we were good. We knew our jobs on that basic level. And that baseline set us up for success as we got into more advanced scenarios or higher level incidents. The baseline was we're good. We knew how to drag hose. We knew how to force entry. And it was just a comfort level. So we were ready for whatever else was out there. We had a good baseline. And just to end this little conversation, I mentioned before that I told my crews we were going to train every day. And we did. So I had two of my drivers, two firefighters who are now drivers, just recently in the past year, both come up to me at different times, and they're like, "Hey, I wanted to thank you." I'm like, "Well, thank me for what?" "Well, you really made us train all the time, and we're not going to lie, it sucked. It sucked that we were always training, but." And they both said this at different times, and I was just touched. I'm a better driver because we trained so much. I knew the truck, I knew how to pull hose, I knew my job, and it was just my heart melted, because it was validated. All that the bitching of today is the bragging right of tomorrow. All that the hard work we put in, it was validated, it was justified, it was rewarding. So I stand by it today. If I went back to operations now, that's the same thing I would do. I would go to the company officers and say, let me explain what I expect. And when you do drill, invite me over. I want to play. I want to get dirty. I want to get out there. I'm the kind of person that when we're teaching the recruits, I always say the same thing over and over again. I will never ask you to do anything that we will not ourselves do. I'm not going to sit there in a golf cart and chase you around while you run a mile lap around the station. I will never do that. I will be in gear, dragging hose with you. So you made a good point by setting the example and leading by example. I know I'm going off on a tangent. I apologize, but so the basics are what I like to focus on.
No, that's absolutely great stuff, Chief. It really is. A couple of quick things off of looking at the FE Talk hashtag on Facebook. Number one, Bill Carey, that I would imagine is tuning in, was nice enough to also FE Talk hashtag the appropriate dates for FDIC. Chief Halton would probably probably give me a terrible look if he'd have known I'd have messed those dates up. So just one more time, April 20th through 25th for FDIC International. 2020 over in Indy. And also Jack Sullivan mentioned excellent way for personnel to learn is to prepare a company level training session. The teacher might learn more than the crew. Absolutely, right? That speaking to that concept of empowerment, right? Let everybody in the company play. Let them be involved, and that certainly has an effect on improving the morale of the company and really increasing everybody's buy-in. So Jack, we appreciate that comment. Tony Carroll, we'll kick it over to you. When you were riding the front right seat, what were some of your go-tos? What were some of your favorite things to do? You talked about some of the day of the week scheduling and things like that. What were some specifics that you really got a lot out
of? I think that SCBA was a important drill, one of my favorite. There's so many things that you can do with that to get them intimately connected to their SCBA, right? I mean, we see there's still issues out there with firefighters running out of air, getting themselves in trouble. So that's a big one. I think again, getting them in their turnout gear, having them make sure that they're comfortable with their turnout gear. I see a lot of firefighters who not only are they battling speed and that kind of thing, but they don't have a good comfort level in their turnout gear. So that becomes an obstacle. Walking your district. I like that. Again, you learn. I like it because you also get to meet some of the people in the neighborhood. Right now, they relate to you as a curious neighborhood member, a firefighter who cares about them because we're out there looking at their building. So when something comes up and they're accusing a firefighter or something, maybe this neighbor would say, "Those aren't the guys that I know. Those aren't the firefighters that I know that come around and check on us." So that that's an added bonus of getting out and doing company familiarization. One of the things that I think that we miss out on on company familiarization though is writing stuff down, like recording what you find when you get out there, because I see where companies go out there and do that. They have this great information and then they fail to pass it on to the other shifts. So if you're going to go out and do this, make sure you record what you found, whether it's a hazard or stairwells or where the standpipe is, layout of a building, bring it back and then document it and put it in a book. We have information books, we call it, for our local alarm and box alarm area. It has all the streets, it has major buildings, and then you can add these kinds of. It's a good place to document this information, so you make sure you pass it on. I guess that's really, again, back to the basics. I think that, right, we can't do the basics enough. We can't do them too many times. So those are good. If you're, I see, I can't think of his name. Brothers in Battle from up in Washington, right? They do a daily stretch where they always show a picture of them stretching a line for the day. And they that's a great idea. The daily stretch. I think that's perfect.
Yeah, and so something some of the guys in our organization took it upon themselves that they've been doing a lot lately. It's just the daily ladder throw, right? It sounds simple, and I don't know if I believe maybe they had read that somewhere or went to a training event where they talked about that, but that's now kind of pervaded a few of our ladder companies, and you get some of the young members out there just throwing a ground ladder. I mean, nothing crazy, just one or two every morning, just for that muscle memory, just for that repetition. So simple things like that can go a long way. And Tony, I really like one of the pieces you brought up, which is that community engagement piece. I hadn't really thought of that, but you're absolutely right. That's especially and building those relationships with in the commercial building arena, building those relationships with the maintenance person and with the with the person that's in charge of the building and things like that. So then maybe when they have some notable event going on that might be of interest to you, for example, they're doing their annual fire pump test or something like that, or they have a major elevator project going on, they might give you a call and say, "Hey, you guys want to come check this out?" Absolutely, right? So, did you have something else, Chief?
Yeah, we have a couple of officers on the job who would drive down the road and they would stop the rig and say, "Go put a ladder up to that building." Especially like the 45-foot ladder because it's so rare that we throw that, right? And then they don't want to keep going to the same building. I think we do really good about putting it up at the firehouse, right? We can ladder the hell out of our second floor window at the firehouse, but it's when we get out there and we find one that doesn't fit how we do it at the firehouse that you got to put up. So that's easy, right? You're driving through and you find something that looks of interest and you say, go right now. It shouldn't really shame anyone because
Yeah,
I haven't done it either.
that's really good, and I think doing the same thing, and this kind of comes around to the discussion we talked about earlier. So I forget exactly who brought it up, but even the competition stuff, right? Just the driving along. All right, pull over in this parking lot and empty the tank from the deck gun, right? And just going through that process really quickly as an operator of doing this and engaging the pump, putting your helmet on, putting your wheel chalk down, getting up there, firing up your deck gun, revving it up, all that kind of stuff. Who can do that the quickest? Or maybe it's pull over and into this parking lot and set up your aerial. Whoever to its full extension, provided that there were no safety violations made along the way, who can do that the quickest. And I think going the apparatus route for some of those things is good too. Yeah, Chief Shaw, go.
Just to say, and this is the tangent off what Tony was saying, just a final thought on that. If you set that standard early, if you, let's say you're getting with the crew and that's something you do on day one, they may expect that going forward. I know that was thrown on me one day as a new driver, and I botched the drill. And I was embarrassed, and I never let that happen again. So you're setting the standard by doing that. If you do that little trick early, and you make that kind of like the standard, even small, you get your crew thinking, man, this guy's gonna test me. I better know my stuff. I better be on my game here. So I like that you brought that up. That's
or Or maybe they'll even come in and say, "Hey, Cap, I saw a building over here. We got to go look at."
Yeah.
Right? They may throw the glove down and say, "Let's do this." I saw this one.
And isn't that what we all eventually at the end of the day strive for, right? Self-motivation from our firefighters, and from, what a great thing it is if I love it if we're leaving a fire alarm or leaving a medical call or something like that, and one of my crew members is like, hey, did we check and see if where the FDC is on this building? Did we swivel them and make sure they're not stuck or something like that? And usually I'm the one saying that kind of stuff. But if I'm somewhere else or whatever, or just want to get back to the rig, and somebody's like, hey, what about this? Once you get your company members so bought in that they become self-motivated for that training and that preparation and pre-planning type of stuff, that's when you really got it. That's when you're really starting to get it figured out as a company officer. And I think that's really important. Cap, what are some of your thoughts on all this stuff we've been talking about and company drills?
Well, some of my favorites were also some of the easiest. You talk about throwing ladders. That was one of them, because we went into a lot of neighborhoods with our truck, which is pretty good size apparatus. But leaving a medic call or even a fire run, and we have a lot of vacants, and we would just stop at one and tell me what'd be the first ladder you'd pull off of here, and where would you put it, and why? Because for me, it's a personal pet peeve. The one thing I hate seeing when I look at the news is seeing a ladder to the front porch roof of a 2-story building. I mean, why? Why did that ladder go
Especially
there?
if that's the only one.
Yeah, and you got that Alpha Delta and that Alpha Bravo, the windows plus the Alpha window. They're probably the same room, and the porch roof is is a safe spot. They shouldn't be there. And why did you pull a 24 instead of a 16? As a first ladder, when you start looking at the distance between ground and windowsill, it should be very simple, and it should be second nature to pull the proper ladder, throw them real quick, and move. Another thing, which for us, and I haven't heard anybody mention, in our neighborhoods, we have 8 neighborhoods that are built in the 40s, 50s, and I mean we're spoiled in that when we go into fires, we do aggressive interior attacks, and we'll go in there and stay all day because of the way the house is built. But we've had so many houses rebuilt in these neighborhoods by like Habitat for Humanity, God bless them, but they build these houses to fit in with the neighborhood, and at 3 a.m, you better know the difference because they're built with lightweight construction. And so we have a habit of going in there and staying all day. You're not going to do that in one of these. And so during the day, I'll stop and I'll point at a house and we'll talk about it, because that's a lightweight construction. That one's a lightweight. It looks like it fits into the neighborhood, but you better know the difference in the morning. And lastly, we'll do the same thing in the neighborhoods with that truck. I'll have the operator. I want you to stop. I want you to spot this for the fire at this house, and I want you to put the aerial up. And I'll give them a chance to come in because we've got trees, we've got RTA wires, and they need to be able to do that. So we just stop on a dime and let's get it done.
I like that. And then sometimes you can preach, sometimes you plan stuff, and sometimes as company owners, you're just having a little fun saying, hey, let's do this just spur of the moment, right, on the spot. I really like that. So we're kind of getting down towards the end here, so I will kick it back over to Chief Shaw and Chief Carroll for some final thoughts. Chief Shaw, I'm sure we could talk about company level training stuff all day. What are your final thoughts?
As the battalion chief of training, I only set the base standards for the year for annual training. I set down what needs to be done from the ISO standpoint, from city regulations, things that basically keep you hired, keep your job. Okay. I try to do my best to add additional stuff out there when I can, when it's relevant, new equipment, things that pop up, acquired structures, and give the people out there the tools and equipment to better their training experience, let's say. But at the end of the day, where the rubber meets the road is at the company level, like we've been talking about the entire time. I can't express enough, and I think we could talk all day about the importance and the value and the platform as company officers and the companies at the station, whether it's company officer or the crew that's teaching or whoever, have the impact they have. Sometimes they forget about that. Sometimes they forget about the impact that they have at that level and how vitally important it is. So again, I go back to what I said before, and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but communication. Constantly reinforcing to the crew how important it is for them to train. And when they do see it, rewarding them, blow it up, put it on social media, give them a kiss, whatever needs to be done, but constantly make sure they know that it's important. And if they're not doing it, don't walk away, correct it. If you walk away, just like we were talking about before, you've allowed it to happen. You've allowed to say, yeah, maybe you don't need to train today. Not an option. Not an option. So that's my 2 cents.
That's great stuff, Chief. I really appreciate it. I'm trying to figure out how Tony Carroll was able to change his little name there to Go Nationals. I'm not quite that sophisticated, but Go Nationals. What are your final thoughts?
Do something. Just do something. My job, and I'm sure even the smaller places, the training academy may not have a staff that can do everything, right? We're all short staffed at our training academies. So they're not going to be able to make sure you have training every day at the company. It's up to the company officer, it's up to the company members to make sure that something gets done. I know, and it burns me up. I know that every day at 8:30 in the DC Fire Department firehouses, they're doing cleanup every day. 8:30, they're doing cleanup, but not every day are they doing a training. Are they training? And I don't know about you, but I think the citizens would rather have us have dirty firehouses and be trained than be the clean firehouses and not trained. So if you can do anything, just do something. It doesn't have to be 2 hours. Doesn't have to be a crazy all out 5 lines on the road drill, but just do something. Company level drills. Again, it's up to us to make sure we know what our companies need. So it's up to us to make sure our companies get it. That's all. Go Nationals.
All right, fantastic stuff. And somehow Steve Shaw has one-upped you. I don't know if the viewers of this hangout can actually see these names or not, but Chief Shaw changed his to I Love Bobby Holton, so he wins. But anyway, I really appreciate everybody tuning in. Again, as we said, we could talk about company level training and its importance for hours and hours. So thank you very much, everybody that's out there, for tuning in to today's Humpday Hangout. Please. Check us out again, first Wednesday of the month, 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time next month for another focus on training Humpday Hangout. On behalf of Captain Larry Abels and Aaron Heller that had to leave a little bit earlier, and Tony Carroll and Steve Shaw, my name is Brad French, coming to you from Dayton, Ohio, here at Sinclair Community College, and we appreciate everybody tuning in, and keep training. Have a good day.